What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bituation Room on a Fantastic Friday. So good to have you here. Thanks for hanging out, for pressing play. We're going to get into some heavy things, some good things, all the things. What in the world? You know what I'm saying? What in the world? Like why? Like why? That's and other like great observations from yours truly. We're going to talk about Lebanon and what's going on right now. We are going to talk about a new ProPublica report that just dropped, which has got to make every Biden official very uncomfortable about the ease at which Israel is receiving the weapons that they are committing genocide and expanded wars with. Maybe a little bit of Liz Cheney stuff, although I don't really know. I don't really care. But let us begin with, I think, this very important footage of a man who should have been president playing ping pong with a child.
Where'd that come from? All right. I got to do this. All right, what's your name? All right, you're in trouble now, kid.
Dude, so this is Bernie playing ping pong with maybe like an 8-year-old. And look at him. He can bend down. He could, like, Biden could never. Once again, it's fun to check in on the alternate timeline of life when Bernie Sanders is president. And I know some people who are watching me are like, get over it. No, never will get over it. Always mad. I go to bed every night thinking, oh my God, I can't believe we were robbed twice out of a Bernie Sanders presidency and a real shot at change in this country that you can call revolutionary, you can call it just common sense, that would have helped everyone on healthcare and climate change, on reigning in corporate power. Now, I know we still have a chance, people. There's still a chance, but it's not as good. It will require a lot more work. And trust me, if Bernie had been elected, first of all, number one, all your favorite lefty streamers and commentators would have just descended into like mad sort of like, actually Bernie sucks. Like, actually he's not, like, this is bad. They would have all just like created a new, reason to get your clicks by being like, actually canceled. I mean, look at what has happened to AOC, although some of that is deserved, but you know what I'm saying? Also the centrists would have taken him down. They would have found, like, I don't know, a forest animal that he had wronged in like the 1970s in Vermont. You know what I mean? Like, that would be the level. But anyway, all to say, it's always fun to think about the alternate timeline when we are here, faced with, once again, fascist Donald Trump, some allegations, some new report out from Jack Smith, some revealed documents we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then, over here, Kamala, whatever you want her to be, Harris, right? Just kind of a stand-in, whatever's popular. And again, therein lies the biggest difference. Donald Trump would never do something that is popular, obviously, at least not popular with neo-Nazis, if it hit him in the face, right? I mean, it nearly hit him in the head, you know what I'm saying, back in July. And like, he didn't get the message, just like, go away already, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so all to say, here we are once again, and this week has been especially disheartening, to say the absolute least, but mostly just like absolutely demoralizing. This week has been incredibly demoralizing on every single level. And on Tuesday, obviously, we talked about a spokesperson for this State Department, Matt Miller, effectively giving away the game in terms of admitting that Hamas has no role in a settled negotiation in Gaza, which is the Israeli line as well, meaning no ceasefire so long as Hamas exists. But who is a Hamas? Doesn't matter. Shh, don't worry your pretty little privileged head about it. We're, a week out from the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th attacks. Next week, we're going to have Matt Lieb of the Bad Hezbollah podcast on, also my husband, and an Iranian scholar and analyst, Nigar Mortazavi, who was on this show before, and she's wonderful. So I'm very excited to have them on. But let's set the groundwork for all of the F shit. I just said shit, but you know what I'm saying. The fuck shit. All of the things that have happened this week that should make us feel fairly demoralized and is demoralizing. Exhibit A. We now know, thanks to the foreign, I believe the foreign minister of Lebanon, that Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a temporary ceasefire just days before he was assassinated. So the Lebanese foreign minister, this is according to CNN, told Christiane Amanpour that Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah had agreed to a 21-day ceasefire just days before he was assassinated. The temporary ceasefire was called for by President Joe Biden. Who? Oh, that guy? His French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and other allies during last week's UN General Assembly. Nasrallah agreed. He agreed, Habib told Christiane Amanpour in an interview aired on Wednesday. We agreed completely. Lebanon agreed to a ceasefire, but consulting with Hezbollah. The Lebanese House Speaker, Mr. Nabi Berri, consulted with Hezbollah, and we informed the Americans and the French what happened. And they told us that Mr. Netanyahu also agreed on the statement that was issued by both presidents, Biden and Macron. How much you want to bet Netanyahu didn't agree to it? But anyway, White House senior advisor Amos Hochstein was then set to go to Lebanon to negotiate the ceasefire. Habib continued, they told us that Mr. Netanyahu agreed on this, and so we also got the agreement of Hezbollah on that, and you know what has happened since then, the foreign minister added. Well, what's happened since then is Hassan Nasrallah was murdered on Sunday evening, I believe, and then Iran attacked Tel Aviv on Monday. No one was killed. I believe someone maybe in the West Bank, which apparently all like Israeli Hezbollah are laughing about now and are like, don't you care about Palestinians? Long stare. Nasrallah was killed in that airstrike, on Friday in the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital. A day earlier, a joint statement issued by the U.S., France, Australia, Canada, and the European Union, Germany, Italy, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates called for a 21-day ceasefire to give diplomacy a chance to succeed and avoid further escalations across the border. A Western source familiar with the negotiations also said Hezbollah had agreed to the temporary truce shortly before the U.S. released the proposal last week. The source didn't say whether the decision had come directly from Nasrallah, but said that for the movement to agree, they would have needed to have his approval. A second source familiar with the talks agreed that the U.S. was aware that Hezbollah was agreeing to the ceasefire. So that's like what, three confirmations that there was an agreement. However, an official from the Biden administration told CNN that Nasrallah himself agreeing to the deal is not something we had heard before. If true, it was never communicated to us. Sure. Matthew Miller said, I can't speak to whether he ever agreed to it and told somebody inside Lebanon. Obviously, that could be something that had happened that we wouldn't be aware of, because we actually don't care. Like, in the end of the day, like, yeah, I mean, that maybe could have been something that happened, but like, we don't give a shit. So anyway, because he's a terrorist. So yeah, like, even though obviously there's like, hospitals and clinics that are being run by Hezbollah that are now being bombed or whatever, but like, we don't care, So obviously Hezbollah never announced their position publicly because of course they wouldn't, because they would wait. They would wait until like other powers announced it. But so I need everyone to understand, this is not just this week. This is not just this year. This is not just the last 5, 10, 15, 20. All of the years that Israel has been slowly continuing to colonize Palestinian land, to have bad faith negotiations about peace. The entire time, yes, we know the history of Hamas, supported by Netanyahu, in order to create a boogeyman, but every single time murdering anyone that would dare seek peace, right? I mean, look at Yitzhak Rabin, who was assassinated, obviously not by the Israeli government, but by extremists in that country. Every single step of the way, whether it's an Israeli, but particularly if it's Palestinian, it is we murder anyone who like agrees with us, right? Like anyone who's trying to create a negotiated settlement, a peace, a ceasefire, that person has to be taken out because that's a danger to our project. That is a danger to us. And on and on and on. It's called murdering the moderates. And it's been done time and time again. It is a strategy to create, especially in the Middle East, where colonizing forces murder moderates in order to have nothing but extremists left. And the United States is actually really good at it, right? The United States was good at it in Iraq. Because say what you will, the Baathists under Saddam Hussein, which were supported by the United States, but arguably they were sort of the rational people inside of Iraq. They were the ones that we could have worked with. But since they were all accused of being terrorists and they were running the government, there was no one else to work with except for, like psychopaths, right? Who had like, whether it was Sunni or Shia militias who we supported. Same thing in Afghanistan. We supported warlords left and right because we didn't want to work with anyone who was like, at the time, the Taliban were like, uncle, we give up. Let's negotiate something. We can work with you here. There was an opportunity. And again, this wasn't an emboldened Taliban like it is now because they didn't have 20 years of whittling the United States down. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was a moment there, but because it was, we don't work with literally anyone because we gave you the T, we called you the T word. So now we're going to work with even worse people. But then we're eventually going to call them terrorists as well once they stop benefiting us. We're going to use their actions in order to continue our expansion. But again, the United States didn't have quite the same aims with Kabul as Israel has in the West Bank and in Gaza and in Lebanon. So that was a fun little slice that you're just like, of course, like when that dropped, we were just like, yeah, of course that fucking happened. And this is Sky News from Beirut. Again, Sky News, noted anti-Semite outlet, speaking with rescue workers in Lebanon about how they are being systematically targeted by Israel in their efforts to save people's lives.
Emergency workers, civil defense workers, Red Cross workers, all telling us that they feel they are now the targets of Israeli strikes. One of this emergency crew, civil defense team, said one team went to rescue some people who'd been hurt in a bomb strike. They then got hit. A second civil defense team went to help them. They got hit. The Red Cross went to help that second team which got hit, and they also got hit. A lot of stories about how the emergency work.
That's they're called double tap strikes, where you basically, it's a really fun term where when you murder somebody, then you go and murder the people trying to save the people you just murdered, right? Or that you attacked. And then you attack those people. So that's a 3 layers of, that's a war crime dip. You know what I'm saying? That's a turducken of war crimes of you just like killing the next aid workers and then going after the Red Cross. But if they're civil defense, they're probably Hezbollah run. So of course they're legitimate targets.
Because themselves now feel under target.
Okay, so that was a very short little report. But again, to give you a sense, the same thing is happening. There's more reports of Israel bombing escape routes. Now, just a week ago, Netanyahu was saying, look, our fight is not with the Lebanese people. Our fight is with Hezbollah. But it just so happens that your baby's cradle was on top of a massive missile depot. But anyway, can you leave? Can you just flee? And yes, I think, between 1 and 2 million Lebanese people have fled. Lebanon and Beirut especially, not ironically, but maybe fittingly, has also been a place, a like historic place where refugees from other conflicts like the Nakba in 1948, Palestinians displaced from the West or from Palestine, where they went, but also where those refugees fleeing the Syrian civil war went. I mean, truly a nation, a region of refugees, thanks to foreign intervention, thanks to Israeli aggression, time and time again. It's like it is a constant moving people around. If you take it in the wider scope of how this region has been absolutely devastated by intervention. Again, foreign intervention. I mean, in this case of Syrian civil war, I understand it was Assad, but also backed by Russia, and the the forces against it backed by the United States. So on and on and on and on. But here we go. Israeli strike hits key road used to flee Lebanon. Who could have seen this coming? Israeli military said it hit Hezbollah targets near the Mansna crossing and earlier claimed the group was using it to smuggle weapons into Lebanon. Then a strike on Friday destroyed a section of the road and effectively cut off vehicle access. People are still able to make the journey on foot, with pictures showing families clambering over rubble and scrambling through the 4-meter crater in the road to get out of the country. Here's what I will say about the immediate coverage of what is happening in Beirut. Like, I see some critiques of people saying, like, there's not been equal coverage of what happens in Beirut and what's happening in Tel Aviv. Well, nothing's really happening in Tel Aviv. So there's that. But I think what I'm noticing is this immediate coverage of the people of Lebanon and what's happening in Lebanon, almost juxtaposing it with how long it took for any honest coverage in Gaza. I mean, in part because of the access. It seems like you can just tell on the face that there is way more foreign media access to Lebanon than there is to Gaza. So that is part of why we're seeing what we're seeing. But we're also seeing it, I think, in a context of a year of genocide. So media outlets, albeit very skewed, are like, the wool isn't fully pulled over my eyes. We're pretty sure Hamas is not in Lebanon. But of course, Iran-backed groups are like Hezbollah. So it's all one and the same. And that is where we are hurtling towards, is a regional war, US-supported regional war with Iran. So again, this is the director of the UN World Food Program. It will mean the goods which normally come overland through that crossing, the cheapest, most effective way to bring commodities in that country, will also not be able to be received here. So again, slowly cutting people off from humanitarian assistance, from food aid, from any kind of support, right? And again, Israel hasn't even said what the fuck they want, like truly what they want, like what's in their heart, you know? So between the escalation of this war in Lebanon, and then you have this sucker, President Joe Biden, and this is an article in Politico that is quite revealing about what Joe Biden knows about Bibi Netanyahu and what he doesn't. And like, again, I don't know why Biden is the way he is. I've said before, and I will say it again, I don't know, like Golda Meir rocked him like a baby on a picnic blanket and pointed out into the horizon of the West Bank and said, everything the light touches is yours. Like, I'm not really sure. Or, you know, she gave a really good handy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not, but something happened, right? It was like he was grafted onto Israel. And again, let's remember, there are more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists, just numbers wise, a lot of them. And they don't necessarily have the Jewish people in their hearts, do they? But I digress. Let's read this and sort of get down to the most important part of this. Obviously, he said he does not support an Israeli attack on Iran nuclear sites because we're all waiting to see what Israel will do in response to Iran's attack. He said Biden added that sanctions would be imposed on Iran. Aide said that the U.S. was extensively communicating with Israel about a response, which could include a military strike. Yeah, it will include a military strike. Among possible options under considerations are strikes on Iran-backed militias or directly on Islamic Revolutionary Guard troops, forces in Yemen or Syria. A second official said U.S. aides communicated a preference for a strategic but limited retaliation. Here's what's fun about like Syria and, other Iran-backed groups. Well, there are Iran-backed groups in Iraq. There are Iran-backed groups in Syria, as I mentioned. There's also American troops in those countries. And as we've talked about on this show with people who know better than me, those groups have vowed that if the United States gets more involved than it already is, or if we start to figure out that it's been more involved, the attacks on those American troops will increase as well. And so then what happens? What happens when an American dies? I mean, obviously not a Muslim American. They've died. They've died in Gaza. They're the ones not being evacuated from Lebanon right now, even though, Germany just announced they're evacuating citizens in Lebanon. No, I mean the ones like, the troops. So it only gets worse, people. It only gets worse. But the real revealing thing is how Biden feels about his reticent partner, Netanyahu. For months, Netanyahu and his government have consistently ignored American counsel as to how to prosecute the war in Gaza against Hamas after the October 7th attacks. Biden and his aides were repeatedly frustrated by Israel's widening war aims with Gaza. Oh, man, so bad. Biden deemed Israel's response over the top and did stop a shipment of American arms to Israel. But even as pressure grew from fellow Democrats to create distance from Netanyahu, Biden's reflexive instinct was to support Israel despite the swelling humanitarian crisis. Phone calls between the two men were increasingly turned into shouting matches, according to one official and one other senior official not authorized to discuss private conversations. I love this. Is just like, this is so pathetic. Shouting matches. Like, first of all, my child could win a shouting match with Joe Biden. Like, the guy shouts in whispers. Like, how does his shouting actually sound? Man, come on, man. You can't do the more drops. No, you gotta let humanitarian aid in. I'm serious, man. It's no joke. It's no joke. Maybe it's no joke. Like, what does that actually look like, right? And the other thing is, this is like arguing with your teenager about whether or not they can use the car and then giving them the keys every single time. You're grounded. Here you go. You're grounded. I'll pick you up at 12. So the latest sign of what Biden's critics see as the United States' increasing impotence in the region, which is truly the word to use, impotent, came last month in the wake of Israel's devastating detonation of pagers belonging to Hezbollah militants in Lebanon. Netanyahu at first told the U.S. officials he supported a pause in fighting with the Lebanon-based militant group, but then roundly rejected the ceasefire proposal once it was made public. And the next day, moments after the prime minister delivered a fiery speech at the United Nations, Israel carried out a missile strike in Beirut that killed Hezbollah leader. This is sort of where we were at. Hassan Nasrallah. On Tuesday, Biden and Harris convened a pair of meetings of their national security team and went public with the intelligence that Iran was preparing an imminent attack on Israel. Members of their team, including Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, spoke to their Israeli counterparts, and U.S. destroyers stationed in the region joined Israel in shooting down the barrage of approximately 200 projectiles. You know what else really fucking sucks about this knowledge? That the U.S. could just shoot down missiles, right? Is it like they could have been shooting down these missiles that have been killing civilians and targeting refugee camps? Like the fact that you have that capacity, that there are destroyers stationed in the Mediterranean, there are destroyers available to do this, and you're busy building a fucking pier that floats away when you could, I mean, a little bit weird to shoot down your own missiles, but hell, the war profiteers have already cashed in. The lobbyists have already won. The senators taking hand over fist money from the weapons industry and weapons contractors who currently sit on committees of our defense committees, right? And our foreign relations committees. They've already cashed their checks. So what's a little, hitting, striking down the projectile? Wouldn't that be tight? No. We only do that when it's missiles aimed at Tel Aviv. Biden told Netanyahu to take the win, made clear that the United States would not help Israel in any retaliatory strikes against Iran. Oh, but won't they? Ultimately, Israel responded in a somewhat modest fashion, attacking a strategically important military target, but not escalating the conflict this was before. Netanyahu is showing more willingness to take risks and gamble, and he's feeling very bold because Israel has significantly weakened Tehran's proxies, and they understand they can see that Iran is in a weaker position, said Hagar Shamali, a former National Security Council and Treasury Department official of the Obama administration. I expect a strong response, something that's significant or achieves their own national security objectives, which are what? You don't even know. You don't even fucking know. The objective is regime change in Iran. That is your objective. Just say it. Saudi wants it. Fucking Israel wants it. Weapons industries want it. It's always been Iran, girl. It's always been you. Here's the part that's the most important. Biden told confidants that he did not believe his Israeli counterpart wanted a ceasefire deal, arguing that Netanyahu was trying to perpetuate the conflict to save his political future and assist Trump in November's election, the official said. How is he the last to know? Is this just, is our foreign policy run by a game of telephone, and it starts with like someone on Twitter and it ends with the president of the United States? Because we've all known this entire time. I don't know, man. I feel like it's not working. The more weapons I give him, he wants Trump. I don't think I think he's trying to draw me into a war, but I'm not going to do it. But here you go. Here's more weapons. But I'm not going to do it. I'm mad. But here you go. Here's more weapons. Like, I think the question, I asked on Tuesday and I ask again today, and I think everyone's asking, is it idiocy? Is it impotence? Or is it maliciousness? And I think the answer to all warmongering, genocidal, colonizing pricks throughout history is both. Why not both? You don't have to have a moral aim, right? You don't have to necessarily be a particular Islamophobe, but it helps. It allows for your stupidity and your impotence and your idiocy to go unchecked, unaccounted for, and 40,000 to put it 41,000 to put it so modestly dead later. And oops, we tried. I got angry. And regional war later, oops, we tried. I got angry. And hell, man, look, Biden's like, look, every single president in the recent future has started a war in the Middle East. You think I'm not going to start a war in the Middle East just because I got out of a war in Central Asia? I don't think so. Okay? Am I really an American president without starting an all-out war? And in the words of, no, it was John McCain, but truly, if John McCain were alive today, he would just be campaigning for Kamala Harris like other Republicans like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, speaking to literally no one. But these are the people who have paved the way for a war with Iran. So when I say disheartening, when I say demoralizing, this is the week where you realize we do not have the anti-war forces within Congress, outside of Congress. We don't have the movements necessary although we are building strength, and I do think that more progress has been made, in part thanks to Israel's own undoing, but also in part to the amount of organizers and activists and people who've put their bodies on the line, who've been arrested, who've been making calls to Congress. And my God, I just called my congressman this morning. You can always call your congressperson and put them on speed dial, because we need, obviously, an embargo. And we know that legally there should be an embargo on weapons going to Israel, because by law, if a country is restricting humanitarian access to a beleaguered, to an occupied people, say nothing of whether that's legal or not, you cannot sell them weapons. And we've known that. Antony Blinken is a fucking war criminal. But anyway, here is retired Major Harrison Mann, I believe, who is Jewish, who went on to Dean Abdallah's Sirius XM show. And here's what he had to say about this Iran. I mean, this whether Biden knows that Netanyahu does not want him to be president anymore.
There's also the motivation to stay in power with him.
Yes.
In your view, is also a motivation to help Donald Trump get back in power?
Yeah, I don't think it's the primary motivation, but I think it's clearly a bonus, right? He's got no interest in Biden's given him everything that he wanted, but he still knows that the Trump administration will be better and will be even more pliable and will give the support without the window dressing and without the at least superficial pressure. So, yeah, and that's been clear for a while. And one of the surprising things about this is that President Biden and his entire team, and most of them were in the Obama administration. And if we want to take the incompetence versus malicious intent argument to explain this policy,
yes, we do.
It's like they didn't learn anything watching, Prime Minister Netanyahu come to Congress to stick his finger up at President Obama when he was in office.
Right. So that was he's basically saying, look, there's a lot of Obama people who are now in the Biden administration, and Obama, again, like, they had a little bit of a backbone back then, and because they had a backbone, a small one, Netanyahu came to Congress and made a massive overture to Republicans, and just flagrantly in the face of Barack Obama. And the reason they had a backbone is because they signed the fucking Iran deal. And Israel hated that. Because again, Israel wants regime change in Iran. Our partners, our allies, Saudi Arabia, which we don't openly call them allies, but they're allies, and Israel. Like, I love it. I was like, oh, we're allies, our democracy in the Middle East, like Saudi. What? Our allies are the ones who are gunning for regime change by force in Iran. Obama was the one to actually, and with Biden right there. Although, let's be real, more John Kerry, you know what I'm saying? That guy was good for something. Signed the Iran deal. And Biden refused to get back in it, right? This was something that would have helped, in addition to not continuing the foreign policies of Donald Trump. So miss me with the fucking celebration, I'm sorry, of Tim Walz this week. The guy struck out horribly when talking about Iran and talking about Israel and having any kind of difference between his policies. And this is the thing. It's like, you look at Trump and Biden, and when it comes to foreign policy and border policy, they are very much one and the same. The difference is, of course, in this case, is as Mann just explained, he's like, there's less like window dressing. There's less window dressing of we care. No, every life is a tragedy. Donald Trump's like, there's no tragedy. And again, I think we're all doing the thought experiment. We hate the thought experiment because I don't want Donald Trump back in office. I do believe Kamala Harris is a vote against fascism. I do believe we hold her feet to the effing fire. And if she does not change on this issue, there's no way she's lasting more than 4 years, if that. I mean, You know what I'm saying? Not violently, but you know what I'm saying? Like, what if we like take the streets and it's like Argentina style? Whatever. But yeah, I mean, it is window dressing at the end of the day, and we've all been running the thought experiment in our minds. You know, how would all these libs who are telling us to shut up about this issue, how would they react if it were Donald Trump doing it? How would they react if all of this was happening on the Trump watch? Well, we kind of know how they would react because we have a corollary for immigration, right? Under Biden, we have largely 90% continued these policies, these anti-immigrant, anti-asylum. I mean, under Biden's watch, Haitian migrants were chased on horseback at the border with whips. If Donald Trump had overseen that, I mean, the pussy hats would have gone nuts. But we didn't see that. We didn't see that because a lot of these motherfuckers have no moral bearings about them. They just don't. And yet, we have to point out their hypocrisy and bring them over. And I do not believe that every liberal is a secret fascist. I do believe they can be radicalized. That is where I hope to put my voice in all of this. There are a lot of people who are following me. They watch my shit dunking on MAGA, and maybe that's an inroad to start thinking more broadly. Hey, you know what the real fight, the real antidote to MAGA is? It's having a progressive vision. It's stopping with this warmongering. It's ending it's actually embracing FDR policies. It's doing a Green New Deal. It's doing Medicare for all. That's the only way out of this. Unless you want to keep doing this. If you want to keep doing this every fucking 4 years, fine. I don't. Anyway, here's ProPublica's report about, despite the anger and the behind the scenes, their new report, I'm sorry to keep on with this because there is some fun Trump news, but their report is inside the State Department's weapons pipeline to Israel. Basically like a uniquely easy process. So there's a little bit of backstory. I think that's great here. The United States first began selling significant amounts of weapons to Israel in the early 70s. Until then, Israel had relied on an array of homegrown and international purchases, notably from France, while the Soviet Union armed Israel's adversaries. Over the past half century, I'm going to check in with y'all. Over the past half century, no country in the world had received more American military assistance than Israel. The U.S. gives Israeli government about $3.8 billion every year, much more during wartime, to help maintain its military edge in the region. Congress and the executive branch have imposed legal guardrails on how Israel and other countries can use the weapons they buy with U.S. money. The State Department must review and approve most of those large foreign military sales and is required to cut off a country if there's a pattern or clear risk of breaking international humanitarian law, like targeting civilians, blocking shipments of food to refugees. The department is also supposed to withhold U.S. funding, equipment, and weapons from individual military units credibly accused of committing flagrant human rights violations, like torture. But where have we seen any of that in the last year? Where have we seen that? I'm racking my brain. Initially, a country makes a request, and the local embassy, which is under the State Department's jurisdiction, writes a cable called Country Team Assessment to judge the fitness of the nation asking for the weapons. This is just the beginning of a complex process, but it's a crucial step because of the embassy's local expertise. Then the bulk of that review is conducted by the State Department's arms transfer section, known as the Bureau of Political Military Affairs, with input from other bureaus. For Israel and NATO allies, if the sale is worth at least $100 million for weapons or $25 million for equipment, Congress also gets final approval. If the lawmakers try to block a sale, which is rare, obviously, the president can sidestep with a veto. For years, Josh Paul, a career official in the State Department's Arms Transfer Bureau, reviewed arms sales to Israel and other countries in the Middle East. Over time, he became one of the agency's most well-versed experts in arms sales. Even before Israel's retaliation on October 7th, he had been concerned with Israel's conduct. On multiple occasions, he said he believed the law required the government to withhold weapons transfers. In May 2021, he refused to approve a sale of fighter jets to the Israeli Air Force, quote, at a time the IAF are blowing up civilian apartment buildings blocks in Gaza. Remember that 2021 war on Gaza? We forget. The following February, he wouldn't sign off on another sale after Amnesty International published a report accusing Israeli authorities of apartheid. In both cases, Paul later told ProPublica his immediate superiors signed off on the sales over his objections. Quote, I have no expectations whatsoever of making any policy gains on this topic during this administration, he wrote at the time to a deputy assistant secretary. During the same period, Paul circulated a memo to some of the agency's senior diplomats. This is before October 7th. Circulated a memo to some of the agency's senior diplomats with recommendations to strengthen the arms sales review process, such as including input from human rights groups. Paul warned that the Biden administration's new arms transfer policy, which prohibits weapon sales if it's more likely than not the recipient will use them to intentionally attack civilian structures or commit other violations, would be watered down in practice. There's an inarguable significant risk of civilian harm inside the sale of precision-guided munitions to Israel and Saudi Arabia, the 2021 memo said. The U.S. government has been historically unable to hold itself to its own standards, he wrote. Quote, in the face of the pressure from partners, industry, and perceived policy imperatives emerging from within the governments. In the face of pressure from partners, read Saudi Arabia itself, Gulf states, Israel, fucking whomever, France. Industry, the people want money from the bloodshed, and the perceived policy imperatives emerging from within the government. In other words, the idea that throwing down with Israel, no matter what, will somehow help us in our objectives to still nobody fucking knows. None of the recommendations were implemented. Paul resigned in protest over arms shipments to Israel last October, less than 2 weeks after the Hamas attacks. It was the Biden administration's first major public departure since the start of the war. By then, local authorities said Israeli military operations had killed at least 3,300 Palestinians in Gaza in 2 fucking weeks. In 2 weeks, you already had 2 October 7ths. In 2 weeks. So they detail other, oh my God. Okay, this is crazy. There's more memos saying like, what the fuck are we doing? The Israelis, however, felt different. In late December, just before Christmas, staff in the Arms Transfers Bureau walked into their Washington, D.C. office and found something unusual waiting for them. Cases of wine from a winery in the Negev desert, along with personalized letters on each bottle. The gifts were courtesy of the Israeli embassy. Oh my God. Oh my God. I just vomited a little bit. I'm going to take this moment to remind you all, you can support this show by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/bituationroom is where you go to do that. You literally help make me a better person. No, you help make this podcast possible and help support the people that work on it. This is a barely breaking even endeavor, my people. So you truly allow me to do this and read the news to you out loud. Also, we have merchandise. It is 100% union made. That's why it's maybe $5 more than normal merch. You get the union bug. There's such cute shirts, Bituation Room logo shirts, Frantifa shirts, stickers, tote bags, working on more merch, maybe for Christmas, who knows? It's not a bottle of wine from the Negev desert, but hey, you know what might chill us out a little bit is telling you about our sponsor and the sale that they've got going on right now. Perfect time to bring it up. SunsetLakeCBD.com has a edibles sale going on right now. So I'd like everyone to take this moment and check it out. Not this moment, but in a second. SunsetLakeCBD.com. Don't use the coupon code for Antifa. Use the coupon code October 24 at checkout, guys. 35% all of their edibles, again, including the Goodnight gummies, including those focus gummies that I love that have CBD and lion's mane in them, the relax gummies that have ashwagandha in them. I love their gummies. They're wonderful. So sunsetlakecbd.com, coupon code October 24, 35% off. Usually it's 20% off with my code. 35% off. I forgot to say this early on. I got very carried away. But, good time to do it an hour into the stream. Thank you, Sunset Lake CBD. You're a wonderful company. Go support them. Craft CBD. And now let's get back to the heinous stuff. State Department spokesperson said employees are allowed to accept gifts from foreign governments that fall below a certain dollar threshold. To allege that any of their allegiances to the United States should be questioned is insulting, he added. How dare you? Swish his wine. Sips it. Tastes like blood. The accusation the Department of State is placing a disproportionate attention on Israel is inconsistent with the facts. I don't know, buddy. You sure give them more weapons than any other country. A spokesperson for the Israeli government told ProPublica the embassy routinely sends individuals bottles of wine, not cases, to many of its contacts to cordially mark the end of the year holidays. Fucking gross. Fucking gross. So one of these major figures in the Biden administration is someone who a friend of mine reminded me that I used to protest back in the day. His name is Jack Lew. He used to work at NYU where I went. And Jack Lew is now in the Biden administration. And he has been one of the people signing off on these bombs and weapons. Lew delivered his endorsement of Israel's request for 3,000 precision GBU-39 bombs, which would be paid for with both U.S. and Israeli funds. Lew is a major figure in Democratic circles, having served in various administrations. He was President Barack Obama's chief of staff, then became his Treasury secretary. He's also been a top executive at Citigroup, a major private equity firm. I am so sick of this. I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of the lesser of two evil being so fucking evil. So we're learning about like how much they were dropping. Hang on, I wanna get closer. Oh, Arab media continues to share countless images and videos documenting mass killings and hunger while affirming that Israel is committing war crimes and genocide and needs to be held accountable. This is Harit Rarit, a career diplomat based in the Middle East, who sent daily reports analyzing Arab media to the agency's senior leaders. Her emails describe collateral damage from airstrikes in Gaza, often including graphic images. So again, all the images that we were seeing. So this is like, hey, y'all, it's pretty bad. It's all American-made weapons. She resigned in protest and told ProPublica those images alone should have prompted the U.S. government investigations and factored into arms requests from the Israelis. She said the State Department has willfully violated the laws by failing to act on the information she and others documented. They can't say they didn't know. Rarit said her superiors eventually told her to stop sending the daily reports. Okay, so this is a classic Zionist shit, right? It's like, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not, none of it's happening. It's all fake. Oh, now I'm seeing the evidence. I'm going to just block you. I'm going to mute. I don't want to see these reports. No, thanks. I'm going to just check out of reality completely. These again are GBU 39s, I guess. While the U.S. had hoped that smaller bombs would prevent unnecessary deaths, experts in the laws of war say the size of the bomb doesn't matter if it kills more civilians than the military target justifies. Lieutenant Colonel Rachel E. Van Landegeham, a retired officer with the Air Force's Judge Advocate General Corps, said the IDF is legally responsible for doing all it can to know the risks to civilians ahead of time ahead of any given strike in order to avoid indiscriminately bombing densely populated areas. It seems extremely plausible that they just disregarded the risk. Yeah, no, that's exactly what they did. But Liu disagreed. Liu said that the IDF systems for choosing targets is so sophisticated and comprehensive that by defense attaché Sherrith's estimation, it, quote, meets and often exceeds our own standard, according to the cable. So they lied. They lied. They lied. They lied. And again, Liu is the U.S. ambassador to Israel. We've seen him multiple times. And I guess I didn't know that I had protested him back in the day. Thank you, Boulder the Point. Says, hi, happy Friday. Wanted to send some love when you were surrounded with so much hate. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for the super chat. Zero PE, also with a super chat. So much love. Biden has told stories in the press in the past about his father indoctrinating him with Zionist propaganda when he was really young. I mean, again, it's also like, that's such a conservative thing to do, to be like, I have not had an independent thought from my father or my parents for 82 years. Cool. Thank you, Robo Blake, for becoming or resubscribing 9 months strong. 9 months, Madam Franny, over on Twitch. Appreciate you. Everybody, you can subscribe and also get access to bonus content every Wednesday. Guys, this Wednesday was a lot more fun than what I just did right now. This past Wednesday, I should have said this earlier, we went into Ta-Nehisi Coates. Actually had a lot of critiques of the way Jon Stewart interviewed Ta-Nehisi Coates. I thought it was really bad, but then there was worse, so we talked about that. Also, finally did our Moo Dang episode, so you don't want to miss that. Go become a member on YouTube or Twitch, or better yet, a patron, patreon.com/bitchuationroom. There is so much more, but I'm very, very annoyed today. But anyway, what's crazy about all this is that somehow it gets worse. Somehow we live in a time when, because the other side tried to overturn an election violently, we have a clear decision in November. So thanks to Jack Smith, who released a bunch of new, basically new evidence collected in the January 6th case against Donald Trump that he incited a riot, which is now being presented as not part of his presidential duties, as per the hand-picked Supreme Court decision that said Donald Trump or any president could do whatever they want and is above the law. But like, greatest democracy on earth, you know what I'm saying? Super cool. At least we're not a banana republic. Look at all these backwards nations. We know a thing or two about democracy. Anyway, that guy's running again, and we're letting him. Are you gonna prosecute him before the election? No, we're not. We're just gonna leave it up to the people. Let the people decide. Oh, you mean you like the popular vote? No, it's not the popular vote. It's this thing called the Electoral College. It's just kind of a holdover from slavery times. It's chill, you know. It basically comes down to like 5,000 people in Nevada, and that's fine. It's good. So my favorite part of the reveals that Jack Smith dropped, not only that Rudy Giuliani texted the wrong person, the fake electors scheme, which is like, oh gosh, oh gee, wrong number. Anyway, stay in touch. Hope the wife is well. Ooh, how can you unsend? How do you unsend something? God, I should have updated. Can't you edit? If I edit it and they see that I edited the plan to make it look like a joke, can I just write JK? This I think is the most damning, is that one of Trump's campaign officials said, quote, in the lead up to January 6th, make them riot. Ooh, make them riot, and make them riot he did. A big part of the case against Trump is making clear that he and those around him knew their plan was corrupt. This, according to the Washington Post and their takeaways, that it wasn't just them really believing the election was stolen. One detail in particular stands out. A scene from November 4th, 2020 at the TCF Center in Detroit. It says a colleague of a Trump campaign official and an alleged co-conspirator informed them that a batch of votes that heavily favored Joe Biden was apparently correct. The alleged co-conspirator, whose description matches that of Trump's election day operations chief, Mike Roman, allegedly responded by saying, "Find a reason it isn't." And, quote, "give me options to file litigation." So, lie. Then, in a mangled message, the co-conspirators seem to suggest that they are not concerned if the claims are frivolous, even if itbis. Is itbis a word? Is that like if it's shit? The colleague suggested such things could lead to a repeat of the so-called Brooks Brothers riot, a fraught scene in South Florida during the contested 2000 presidential election. The Trump campaign official and co-conspirator allegedly responded, "Make them riot. Do it. Do it. Cue Sith Lord. Do it," or whatever. You know, the fucking prime minister president. Who's the guy? Do it. It's an eerily prescient comment given that 2 months later, Trump falsely and often nonsensical claims of voter fraud would lead to a large-scale riot at the U.S. Capitol. It's worth noting whether the Brooks Brothers riot was actually particularly violent is disputed. I mean, it gave the illusion that the people were mad, right? It wasn't as violent, but you know, you had a bunch of white guys. Look at them. They just got off. Oh, there's one woman. Look at these motherfuckers. Like, these are all like, they just got off the stock floor. Right? They're like, should we go to happy hour or should we go riot in South Florida? This is truly the funniest. Like, and what's great is that, like, to a lesser extent, this is what January 6th looked like. Just give them a little bit of, you know, Amazon purchased militia wear, and you get this is the same shit. Dizzle McFizzle, here's some cheddar. Listening to you on a bike ride. Oh my God, I wish I could bike. I wish I could move my body. You know, it's just mush down here. So this is CNN sort of drawing this comparison again. It echoes the last 25 years in American politics. Again, the years that your life and my life could have been very different, very different. Had the year 2000 not happened, I mean, I love, this is like a perfect, like, rewind, like, erase everything that's happened. I mean, I'm willing to let go of even the good things that have happened in the last 20 years, 25 years. Just for this, just to get, yes, I said it, Al Gore. Just to get Al Gore. So the Brooks Brothers riot, that helped stop a recount in Miami-Dade County weeks after the election in election day in the year 2000. The 2000 episode looms large in the memory of people who lived through the hanging Chad's election, perhaps in part because it has the benefit of a catchy nickname, which was meant to impart that the well-dressed Republican operatives were part of an army of lawyers and staffers that flooded into Florida. They were dressed supposedly in clothes from Brooks Brothers rather than whatever people in Miami might have been wearing at the time. For the Trump campaign 4 years ago in 2020, according to Smith's filings, disruption was the aim. Trump had denied any wrongdoing and said the legal cases against him are all part of a witch hunt. He won't get a chance to present the defense against Smith's allegations before Election Day, but that's because his strategy of delaying the case has been very effective. Yeah, and our justice system sucks 1,000 dicks. Smith recalibrated and pruned his accusations against Trump, which were first filed over a year ago after the Supreme Court granted Trump a new special immunity for anything that could be construed as official conduct during his presidency. And again, Judge Tanya Chutkin is bringing this under the grounds that he was doing this as a candidate. CNN's justice team has a much longer and more thorough look of the accusations, which include that the FBI had been able to essentially recreate what Trump was doing on his phone as the January 6th Capitol riot unfolded. It's worth focusing on the Brooks Brothers riot of 2000 and comparing it with a request for a Detroit riot in 2020. I guess it was in Detroit that this guy was asking for a riot. Why? Smith's allegations could be as much a warning as a history lesson if, as many expect, counting and recounting ballots in the election next month stretches well past Election Day. Republicans have made no secret of their plan to deploy 100,000 supporters to keep a close eye on counting ballots in swing states. Comparisons between what the Trump campaign tried in 2020 and what George W. Bush campaign did in 2000 are not new. Douglas Hay, a former CNN commentator who has a long history of working within Republican politics, made the connection in real time and said what Republicans were doing in 2020 was nothing like what occurred in 2000. Hay should know since he was part of the Brooks Brothers riot. Then we fought to make sure every vote counted, Hay wrote in the Washington Post in November 2020 after seeing protesters loudly chanting and trying to disrupt the counting of votes in Detroit and elsewhere. Those Trump supporters, he argued, were trying to thwart an effort to make sure that all legally cast votes are accurately counted. What? That's exactly what you guys were doing. Hay documented his recollections of the Brooks Brothers riots, which included frustration at poll watchers who are recognized part of the election process when they were locked out of a room where disputed ballots were being examined. I love that. He's like, oh, this is wrong, but what we were doing is fine. So again, it's an outrage model as they detail, but the real thing is what they end with in the CNN article, which is, drum roll, as we all know, CNN Supreme Court expert Joan Biskupic has noted the current Supreme Court includes 3 justices, Roberts, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, who, while they weren't among those shouting lawyers in Miami, worked on behalf of the Bush campaign in Florida during the recounts that year. They worked in Florida on behalf of the Bush campaign in the state where his brother was fucking governor during the recounts that year, bringing the case effectively to the Florida Supreme Court that then got brought to the actual federal Supreme Court. And then the rest is history. And no, the ballots were never fully counted. And you and I would like 25 years of warmongering and far-right bullshit back. So miss me with your Liz Cheney bullshit. I'm so sick of it. As if they didn't all see this coming. I mean, Republican, it's just like, I can't. And so who knows? Maybe there's going to be a contested election in one of the swing states, and that will get escalated to the state Supreme Court, maybe to the federal Supreme Court, and we will have this all over again. And if you and I do not take the streets, well, then you're not really part of the Frantifa, are you? Yes, I said it. We should absolutely take the streets. That is not something to shy away from. But blah, blah, blah. How long do you think the Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet is going to be up about how they can control the weather? 8 p.m. last night, October 3rd. Marjorie Greene, in response, I'm assuming, to Hurricane Helene and the conspiracies about Democrats. Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say that it can't be done. How are you a serious person? Like, let's leave the anti-Semitic weird fucking tropes aside. How do you think anyone can control the weather? Okay, you only could be talking about 2 people, 2 entities. Storm from X-Men, which, yes, if we're talking X-Men, Storm can control the weather and does. Obviously to the advantage of Democrats. Okay. But the other thing is China, before the Beijing Olympics, they fired like rain balloons into the sky that cleared the sky in order to get rid of the smog. It was great. Other than that, I'm pretty sure you're talking about the Jews And that's actual anti-Semitism. But no, let's focus on all of the anti-genocide demonstrators. Because, like, they're the real threat, you know? They're the real threat. They're our voters, and we're losing them. We're bleeding them every single day. We double down on Biden's bullshit policy. But let's ignore this. I'm just like, I'm trying to find follow-up tweets. Like, is there anything else? Any follow-up? No. Yes, they can control the weather. Yeah, that's why we have to, that's how bad it gets. That's how bad this election is. These are the choices. Oh. Goonish Lurker, discover you through the Majority Report. Much love. No, much love to you. I'm so glad people discover me from other places. Often they don't. You know what? There is a viral video of me taking down Piers Morgan right now that is not even, it's got 250,000 views. And that's not on my channel. Motherfucker, that's me. I'm not trying to call this guy out because he's like another progressive, but come on now. Patreon.com/bituationroom. Give me that love. Tag me at least. What you doing, homie? What are you doing? And also he uses weird AI for thumbnails. I don't like AI versions of my face. I mean, why would you? Why would you? Let's be real. JK. Dizzle McFizzle, I already read that. Thank you so much. Philip Schwartz, true. Israeli intelligence is sophisticated, so no excuse. No, nothing is an excuse. It's all on purpose. And D's Nuts B Dragon gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much. And also became a member. You get, that Ta-Nehisi Coates, guys, do yourself a favor. Last thing I'll say on this. 2 things. Okay, 2 things. I shared a Hezbollah explainer from AJ Plus on my YouTube channel. I think that was great. If you're like, I don't even understand Hezbollah much. I don't get it. I don't know who they are. I don't know why I'm being told to be afraid. You shouldn't be. And you should watch that explainer. It's very, very good. And secondly, I forgot what I was going to say. Secondly, go watch Chris Hayes' interview with, maybe we can watch it just together. Chris Hayes and Ta-Nehisi Coates was probably the best example of interviewing Ta-Nehisi Coates that I saw. Maybe that's because they're friends. I'm not really sure. But it was just like, oh, thank God someone is doing this and not being bad faith and kind of racist about it. Hang on, I'm gonna find this and hope it doesn't get demonetized. Okay, here we go. Let's watch a little bit of this. We gotta get to the middle of this.
American wealth was built in the plunder, that there is something owed. From that moral certainty to the, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Things do start to get more complex.
Yes.
And from the moral certainty of standing on a street in Hebron to, this is not morally acceptable,
right,
to how do we have 15 million people between the river and the sea with full equality, peace, and flourishing? That is more complex.
Yeah, that is. But you know what? In many ways, the next step is a lot clearer to me, in fact, and actually it was the case for reparations, because the other thing I was confronted with was the extent to which Palestinian voices have been completely pushed out of the frame. So the first step is actually an easy one, to elevate, the voices of the people who are actually having the experience and ask them what should happen here, and not, 1 or 2 of them, but in some sort of mass way. In many ways, that essay is about my complex relationship with journalism, which I love, which is a process I love, which is one that I actually applied right there. But I have to tell you, and I've said this and I'll continue to say this, I would be very interested in how many major media organizations have a bureau in Jerusalem where they have a Palestinian correspondent or bureau chief. I'd love to see those numbers.
Basically Al Jazeera, but they've
obviously,
been kicked
I think anybody
Israel.
should have the opportunity to work that kind
Their
of job.
Their offices are rated.
Just like I think anybody should have the opportunity to cover race in America. But if there were no Black people doing it, or very few, we'd have a problem with that.
Let's go back.
Right there. But I have to tell you, and I've said this and I'll continue to say this, I would be just like I think anybody should have the opportunity to cover race in America. But if there were no Black people doing it, or very few, we'd have a problem with that.
I love that analogy.
It's interesting you say that. Let me just stop for a second. It's interesting you say that because
he's being thoughtful.
I thought about you choosing to write about this topic. I thought of a conversation that you and I had before I wrote my second book, A Colony and Nation, which is about race and policing and the criminal justice system, in which we were just talking as friends, and I was like, I don't know, like I want to write this book, but is it a little weird for a white guy to write this book? And you were like, well, you're an American. It's it's your story as much as anyone, so you should write about it. And in the case of this, neither you or I are either Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, or Arab. Mm-hmm. But we're Americans, and America is not some small part of what's going on over there.
No, we're a large part of it, and it's marked everywhere. There's an essay I talk, an exhibit I talk about City of David where I went to, where there's an actual plaque that thanks America for its support.
That's
I was
wild.
recently reading a report by a Palestinian American scholar, Nora Erekat, and Josh Paul, who resigned from
Josh Paul.
The
we
State
just
Department.
talked about.
One of the points they made was every plane that drops a bomb on Gaza was gotten from here. Those are our bombs. We're responsible. And that's what, a lot of times the pushback is, well, look, there are bad things happening, all over the world. Why particularly are you picking on this one thing? I'm picking on because I'm responsible. Because it is the presidents of this country who have said, we have a special relationship with Israel. So if we have a special relationship, then I have to treat it specially, if that's a word, especially maybe. And so that to me was what, very much called me there.
I want to talk about some other things but I want one more point on this. The thing that I have already started to see people say about you.
Okay, so this is the question that I think he puts really, really gingerly, and Ta-Nehisi has a wonderful answer, but you see he's clearly doing this out of respect and as a friend, and this is like probably the best worded question I've seen around, like, hey, are you just a Hamas lover?
And the thing that I think you will see a lot of will be basically of this form. That you're well-meaning but naive, smart and curious, but essentially got led on a very one-sided sort of propaganda tour, a kind of Potemkin tour, in which the full complexity, you could have been taken to Surat and you would have met Israeli families living under rocket fire, right? Mm-hmm. You could have, this all happened before October 7th, but you could have been taken to Israeli victims of, brutality and terrorism and things like that. And that you came away with this very one-sided image from this one-sided experience.
Well, I'll say two things.
So he's basically he's blaming other people. Other people, I've seen people say you had a one-sided experience. I'm not saying it, but other people have.
The first thing is, it is very, very difficult to spend almost 30 years in media as I have and not be very much exposed. And frankly, to live in America and be a thinking person and not be exposed to the defenders of the Zionist project. It's hard to do that. It's all around us. So that was not the thing I was lacking in familiarity with. The second thing I would say is, look, I am against the death penalty, okay? I don't care if the guy slaughtered 10 children and ate half of them. I don't think that person should be killed. There is nothing I would see that would change my opinion on apartheid. Absolutely nothing. My case is not based on a higher or elevated Palestinian morality. It's not based on a notion that Palestinians are somehow angels or somehow morally better than. This is what I believe about human beings. And there's no thing that I would see that would make that go away. I am against segregation. I am against apartheid. I am against Jim Crow. Nothing will make that okay. Nothing they can do would make that okay.
That is all you need to hear and all you need to know and all you need to say whenever you talk to anyone about this issue. Nothing that Palestinians could do would make apartheid okay. They do not have to be morally perfect angels. They are but mere humans and are honestly behaving the way any human would behave if subjected to 75 years of occupation, war, starvation, human rights violations. Nothing will make that okay. I am very confident in this, and everything else is just the details, really, of how we end it and how we end the occupation. But ending it is the first step. Thank you guys so much. This has been the Bitchuation Room. Fantastic Friday. Support the show. You can also tip TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App. You can send in a super chat, a super sticker. Literally everything helps. You know my preference is welcoming all the new patrons, $10 or more. Access to all the bonus episodes, access to the AMAs, access to all the tea that I like to spill, some wonderful chats and reading suggestions and all this. So check that out, Bitchuation Room. Patreon.com/bitchuationroom.com/com. I've read that wrong. You know what I'm saying. Whatever. Fuck it. See you guys soon. Bye.